I got so many comments from people in my sphere of influence, and I heard from people I haven't heard from in a long time who went out of their way to text me just to tell me how great you sounded on the pay-per-view. Man, it was great to see you back, and you and Tony felt like you just hadn't missed a beat. I was thrilled with the job you guys did the other night.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to hear. It's always good to hear from your buddies and your peers and diehard fans, et cetera, how the work went. And, you know, it was a challenging night because I did the first match, the Okada pack match, easy for me to say. That was our opener. So I did that match, and then I set out until the main event, which is a little challenging because it's like 2 hours and change later type thing.
Right.
So it was tough in that regard. So
yeah, let's talk about it. We got a new world champion, Swerve.
Yeah,
I've been so impressed with him for several months. I'm really happy that he's now the face of AEW. You had the best seat in the house. What'd you think of Swerve and Joe on Sunday night?
I thought it was great. You know, even though I waited a long time to call it, I was glad I got to call it. I'm very pleased and blessed about that. So Swerve's a tough guy. That's one of the things that attracts me to him is that he is a very, very physical, tough guy. I want to know more about his military service. We got to address that because he's mentioned it 2 or 3 times on interviews and so forth. And I think that's a good thing to sell for a babyface, especially that you served your country.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, you know, but he's a tough guy. He's the angle going into that match with he and Joe, I thought was extremely well done and very physical. I credit Samoa Joe with a lot of that because, you know, you got to have a dance partner, and Samoa Joe is an amazing dance partner.
Yes.
He's been a great champion. Who's to say he's not going to be champion again? AEW could do a whole hell of a lot worse than 2 guys with character like Swerve, like Joe. That's
Sure.
what you build. That's what you build a roster around. You know, the solid human beings. And there's one right there on our YouTube look, Samoa Joe. I thought Joe had a hell of a night, and but congratulations to Swerve, no doubt about it. He's living a dream. This being the first black AEW champion was a big deal to him. It wasn't like it was just a throwaway promo line.
Right.
He really was motivated to accomplish that feat, and for him, he did it. He did it.
You're darn right he did it. It was an incredible performance. I'm so glad that he is the AEW champ, and I'm with you. I thought Joe did more than a passable job. I thought he was very believable. He brought some credibility.
Yeah,
he was fantastic as a world champion. I mean, you don't have to explain Samoa Joe. You see Samoa Joe, and you know what's coming. And I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a great pay-per-view. And of course, the match everybody was talking about is Bryan Danielson and Will Ospreay. I wanted to see what you thought of that match.
I loved it. I watched it from the announcer's locker room, and they had a monitor in there, big screen TV they hooked up, so that was kind of cool. But I enjoyed the hell out of it. There's not really anything on that show that didn't live up to the hype. That's the thing. We've said this before, and I don't have an answer for it. You may, Conrad, because you're much smarter than I. But to God dang, man, you know, just how that thing played out, the whole 9 yards, I thought was really, really intriguing. I didn't see any bad matches on there. The first match of the night that we aforementioned, the Okada and Pac match. You know, I've called Okada matches for a long time. Sometimes off the radar because it was on Access TV, and a lot of people didn't get Access TV. But Josh Barnett and I did many, many hours of New Japan Pro Wrestling, and a lot of it featured Okada because he was the golden boy. And I'm sure in the eyes of many New Japan fans, he's still the golden boy. So, but I thought it was a hell of a match. It also accentuated how good Pac is. Pac stayed step for step with one of the greatest wrestlers, maybe arguably the best wrestler in the world. I know there's
Yeah.
a lot of debate about that, Conrad, but Okada didn't have to slow down a step to have a hell of a match with Pac, and so we should attaboy to Pac, quite frankly.
Really a barn burner show. You know, we said last week AEW always delivers on pay-per-view. I think they certainly did that this past weekend.
And I wonder why that is. I was going to ask you that question. Why do you think that, it's not that the Dynamite show and or Collision are phoned in. They're not. It just seems like the talents take it upon themselves to raise their level on these pay-per-views. And it's not just a trend. It happens all the time. It's almost like if you don't have a great pay-per-view, something, what happened? What's going on? Because we're spoiled. We're spoiled with the AEW pay-per-views. And if you haven't watched one, folks, and if you can afford the tariff, as they say, then you should check them out because it's a different feel. And take it from an old timer. I know the feel. That's the one thing I still got, I think, is the feel for the game. And these games on pay-per-view with AEW are nothing short of extraordinary.
Of course, this was one of the first times you were able to, maybe it's the second time you were able to order an AEW pay-per-view on Triller. And I know once upon a time you were a big part of that rollout back when it was called Fight. That's probably a big deal for whatever stock you got years ago in order to help sort of roll out Fight to wrestling fans. And I don't know if you saw the news, but I guess it looks like after all these years, Triller is finally going to go public. So maybe that stock you got years ago might actually be worth something one day, Jim. How about that?
I hope you're right, Connie. I have an ample supply, so fingers crossed that it's going to hit. It's a great concept. If you're a wrestling fan,
yes,
it's hard to figure out why you wouldn't want to do it because it's affordable as hell. And I don't know. I just think it's a good investment for a fan. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a stockholder. I don't even know how much stock I've got, but I've got a fair amount. And I just hope it's worth something someday.
Well, I think that's going to happen sooner rather than later. I, for one, am really pumped to see what happens in the future with AEW because it feels like these pay-per-views are coming more frequently. We're only about a month away from Double or Nothing, which I still thought was, maybe one of the tent pole events of AEW. Maybe not the AEW equivalent of WrestleMania. I might would have said that once upon a time, but with the success of Wembley last year, maybe that's all out now, or all in rather. But yeah, what do you think, man? AEW got another pay-per-view coming up in a month. Do you like this, monthly pay-per-view schedule that we're on right now, seemingly?
I do, because it gives you ample time if you think about it and you put your creative hats on from a talent standpoint and an administration standpoint. It's a good thing. It gives you time to build, gives you a month, and in today's world, a month is an eternity. And today's quick process mindset that we're seemingly all in. So I like and for me, that's my schedule. Tony Khan hired me back to do pay-per-views, and I'm tickled to death to be there on them. So once a month is great for me personally. And I hope that somewhere along the way, there's another assignment or two thrown in there at times, either on Dynamite or Collision. I love working with Schiavone. It's not that I don't like working with Excalibur. He's very good. He's our ace announcer right now.
Right.
And he's earned that accolade, and he works his ass off. He did every match on that pay-per-view. Every match on that pay-per-view. So that's a lot of work. He came back to the announcer's locker room and took his mask off, and it looked like he'd been in a shower, sweating, works his ass off, never bitches, smart guy. I've learned a lot about some of these Hispanic wrestling holes and Japanese wrestling holes from Excalibur, because he's a true student of those two genres.
Right.
And that helps me because I'm not, my generation and my formative years had little to do with Hispanic or Japanese content. So I'm catching up, so to speak. and but he helps me a lot, so he's good. But I really, I was going to say, I really enjoy working with Shivani. It's just an old time feel. It kind of takes you back to a different time, different place, and I always have fun to work with Tony. He's very giving. He's a great listener, and I don't say that in a negative way. To be a great announcer, you got to be a great listener. You got to be able to connect the dots. You got to hear what your partner said while you're contemplating what you're going to say. That all ties in somehow or another. So there's an art form in that situation. But Shivani and I have been working together so long. It's kind of like Jerry Lawler and I. The things just happen naturally, and you don't ask why or, well, I wonder why we did that. You just do it, and it feels right. So, but I appreciate those comments. I'm glad folks like Tony's work and mine.